हेलो। अस्सलाम वालेकुम। हेलो, अस्सलाम वालेकुम। होपफुली आवाज आ रही होगी। किसी को आवाज नहीं आ रही तो वो मुझे बता दे, ठीक है? तो अ, चलें, ठीक है हनान, स्टार्ट करें। ये वाला पेपर करना है 5070 समर 22, क्वेश्चन पेपर 1-1, ठीक है, जीसीई के। तो इफ यू आर स्टडिंग आईजीसीएसई तो आई मीन द पेपर्स आर ऑलमोस्ट द सेम, द सिलेबस इज ऑलमोस्ट द सेम, ठीक है, द क्वेश्चंस आर ऑलमोस्ट द सेम, सो यू कैन ऑल्सो ज्वाइन इन। बस एक सेकंड में ये आवाज चेक कर लूं। ठीक है, चलो स्टार्ट कर लेते हैं। स्टार्टिंग विद द फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन, ठीक है। हनान, आई जस्ट बी वेरी वेरी क्विक, ठीक है। स्टार्टिंग विद द फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन, मार्कर्स वगैरह मैं निकाल लूं, जस्ट अ सेकेंड। अच्छा, starting with the first question, scientist needs to add approximately 100 cm of water to each of 50 large beakers. The scientist needs to fill the beakers as quickly as possible, ठीक है, quick। और वॉल्यूम मेजर करना है, ठीक है, you're supposed to measure volume and 50 large beakers. So remember, burette is not quick, ठीक है, if you know what a burette is, उसके अंदर the liquid pours out drop by drop, ठीक है, that's not going to work. Gas syringe is obviously for gases, so that is also gone. Pipette is also not very quick, ठीक है, pipette का issue है कि it's got a very small nozzle, so things will come out of it drop by drop. So quickly as possible, not a pipette, ठीक है, gas syringe, obviously that's wrong, burette गलत. So you're left with the measuring cylinder. Measuring cylinder, remember, is the quickest when you try to measure things. The other thing is कि 100 cm cube. Yep. So you've got a 100 cm cube fill करना in each of 50 large beakers. So that's fine. It's a 100 cm cube measuring cylinder, so that should work. ठीक है. Remember, quick measuring cylinder. लेकिन it's not very accurate. Pipette or burette, they're far more accurate. ठीक है. So next one is okay, four mixtures each containing two substances are shown in the table. The two substances need to be separated and collected. Which row is correct? तो separate करना है और collect भी करना है. Now remember, chromatography जो है ना, that's not a collection system. ठीक है, it's just separation. It's not, you can't really collect. If you're doing chromatography of ink dyes, you can't collect those ink dyes. You can just separate them. You can analyze them, but definitely you can't really collect them, ठीक है। अच्छा, आगे आ जाओ तो you've got methanol and ethanol. Remember, they are both miscible. That means they mix with each other, ठीक है, so that's not going to work, ठीक है, because evaporation would not work, both would evaporate, ठीक है। So how would you separate them? That's not going to work. Oxygen and nitrogen fractional distillation, that is fine. ठीक है, remember, oxygen and nitrogen have different boiling points. Liquid air is always separated using fractional distillation because they've got different boiling points. तो किसी boiling point पे nitrogen मिल जाएगा, किसी boiling point पे oxygen boil होके it will evaporate, it will turn into gas, and you can collect that. So C is fine. C has no issues. Last वाला गलत, इसलिए sand is insoluble. Barium sulfate, remember, all sulfates are soluble except for barium, lead, calcium, तीन चार हैं which are not soluble. So this is not soluble, this is not soluble. If both of them are not soluble, you can't really do filtration because वो दोनों ही filter out हो जाएंगे, ठीक है, so that's not going to work. Next one, quickly. Now the next one is, and hold on a second. So next is, two samples of a colorless solution are tested separately with aqueous NaOH and aqueous ammonia, and the results are recorded. A white precipitate is formed. ये मैं खोल लेता हूँ एक सेकेंड, कहाँ गए नोट्स? जिसके अंदर you have to remember things, ठीक है? You have to remember the test for cations and you have to remember the test for anions, ठीक है? ये message करके नीचे you can get the worksheet as well. So there's a revision data sheet, and this one is for acid basis salts only. So remember test, remember see revision के लिए I've opened it. Remember test for ions. NOH and ammonia used for testing cations. ठीक है? All cations can be tested using either NOH or you can test it using either ammonia. ठीक है? और बाकी test for gases है, and you've got test of anions. So you've got all these tests. So ये वाला test देख लेते हैं. Which test is he talking about? He's saying कि he's got NOH and he's testing it with ammonia. ठीक है? So these two things. So white precipitate form हो रहा है NOH white precipitate. So he's getting a white precipitate with both of them. You got a white precipitate with NOH, you got a white precipitate with ammonia as well. And the precipitate dissolves in excess. ठीक है? Both cases में if you look carefully, the precipitate dissolves. दोनों में dissolve हो रहा है. तो ये क्या होगा? तो दोनों में dissolve होगा. That's going to be zinc. इधर देखो zinc के अंदर. Zinc is going to produce a white precipitate in both cases. And it's soluble in excess, giving a colorless solution, soluble in excess, giving a colorless solution. So NaOH and ammonia, it's soluble in both. And remember, a lot of compounds have white precipitate. Calcium has white precipitates, but वो एक में बनता है, it's insoluble, and the other one, it's a very slight precipitate. Aluminium also has white precipitate. So remember, the confusion is always between aluminium and zinc. Aluminium also has a white precipitate, like it's soluble in NaOH, but it's not soluble in ammonia. ठीक है? So in that case, it's not soluble. But let's stick to zinc is the answer in our case. ठीक है? So zinc, the cation present is zinc. ठीक है? बस हो गया काम. अगले क्वेश्चन पे. अच्छा, अब अगला ये कि क्या क्वेश्चन है? वो कह रहा है कि वो ये कह रहा है कि which row correctly describes changes in the particles when a substance freezes. ठीक है? So freezes, right? It's becoming a solid. Solid के अंदर what happens? Particles are tightly packed. They don't move. They've just vibrated by their fixed position. They don't have a lot of energy. Okay, so particles obviously become more ordered. Okay, so A, B में से होगा, and they lose energy because that's why they become more ordered क्योंकि they can't move around, so they don't have a lot of energy. ठीक है, so B ठीक है. आगे चलो भाई. अच्छा, आगे ये कि ethylamine and hydrogen chloride can react together to form a white solid. एक second hold करना. चलो ठीक है हनान. ethylamine and hydrogen chloride gas react together to form ये क्वेश्चन बहुत दफा आता है. So particles of ethylamine, that's ये वाला, ठीक है, CH3H5NH2. ठीक है, if you calculate the MR, the mass of this particle, ठीक है, that's दो कार्बन कितने हुए? That's 12 plus 12, that's 24. उसमें फिर N14, 24 14 कितना हो गया? 38 और 38 में 7 ऐड करो कितना होगा? 38 7, that's I think that's 45. ठीक है, you can just double check this. HCl कितना होता है? That's 35.5 and साथ उसमें H है तो 1 है, so that's 36.5, right? So that's 36.5. Anyways, 45 or 36.5. So this HCl is going to be the one that's going to be the fast particle. ठीक है, light particles are always fast. Heavy particles are the ones that are slow. तो HCl fast होगा. तो HCl यहाँ से ट्रैवल करना शुरू कर रहा है और ethylamine traveling from the other side. Now remember, HCl will cover a larger distance because it is fast. ठीक है, so you're going to meet at A. वो slowly आ रहा है आराम आराम से, ठीक है, and HCl जो है ना वो तेजी से आ रहा है, so HCl is going to cover a bigger distance. तो बीच में नहीं मिलेंगे. B is right in the center. It's probably going to be A. So A is the answer. So at which position in the tube will you see a ring of white solid ethylamine hydrogen chloride, whatever that is? So that's going to be A. ठीक है, that's where they're going to meet. Diffusion, remember, उसकी क्या revision? Diffusion दो चीजों पे depend करता है. Mainly one is temperature. You got a higher temperature, the particles would diffuse faster. Like hot food, you can smell it quicker, right? And the other one is mass. Lighter particles, they travel faster. I said two particles have the symbol. The symbols are given. Which statement about these particles are correct? So they have the same number of electrons. 26 electrons है इसके पास, ठीक है, remember it's छोटा 26 but it lost 2 electrons, right? 2 plus means it lost 2 electrons. दूसरे वाले के पास कितने? That's 27, but 3 plus means it lost 3 electrons, right? So 26 minus 2 is 24, 27 minus 3 is also 24. So they do have the same number of electrons, और वो सही है, ठीक है, तो बात खत्म. आगे चलो, ठीक है. There are two isotopes. And he says that Cl can have two isotopes and they can have different neutrons, right? So one is 35, the other one is 37. Use these isotopes and carbon-12 and hydrogen-1. How many different relative molecular masses are possible for the compound with the molecular formula C2H2Cl3? ठीक है, तो इसकी masses कितनी हो सकती हैं? Remember the formula has अच्छा क्या है इस फॉर्मूले के अंदर? इस फॉर्मूले में ना there are two carbons. तो वो क्या होगा? 12 plus 12. तो 12 और 12. Plus it has 3 hydrogens, so वो 3 हो गया. Now there are 3 Cls. Now Cl अभी हमने डिस्कस किया, it could be 35. So all 3 could be 35. तो ये जो भी mass आ रही है इसको टोटल करो. I don't know what the mass is. The calculator पे करना पड़ेगा. I'm just opening my calculator, so it's 35 plus 35 plus 35. सारों को ऐड करो और बीच में ना there is 3 is added plus there is 24, 12 plus 12. Now this comes out to be 132, right? So the formula molecular mass is 132 if all the Cls, all of them are 35. ठीक है, remember दो options हैं. It could also be 37. So the other one could be carbon 12, 3 hydrogens, and you could have 35. The other Cl is also 35, and then one of them could be 37. अब mass क्या हो जाएगी? 2 से बढ़ जाएगी. It's going to become 134. ठीक है, you can add that up, and it's going to become 134. और उससे क्या, how many different masses, molecular masses are possible, right? So we can just go on. We can go on. We can do further. We can check for further options. So, or here, 12 plus 12 plus 3 to 35. So this could be 37, and the other one, Cl, could also be 37. Okay, 3 Cls. 2 of them are 37s. Now the mass will be 2 से और बढ़ जाएगी, 136 हो जाएगा. You can add them up, right? And the fourth one could be that all 3 of them could be 37. They could be the other isotope. Okay, पहला भी 37 is Cl, then the second one is also 37. And the third one is also 37. Just एक second. अच्छा, so all of them. तो ये भी 37 है, ये भी 37 है, तो अब हो जाएगा 138. And that's it. ठीक है, that's all the combinations I had, possible combinations. So the answer is 4. ठीक है, there are 4 different masses that are possible. ठीक है, so the answer is 4 in this case. So अगला 8 पे which statement about the substances at room temperature and pressure is correct? ठीक है, सारों को पहले डिस्कस कर लेते हैं. The first one, that's definitely an alloy. It's a mixture of metals, different sized atoms, so you get a irregular lattice, right? This one is an ionic compound. You got a positive metal ion, you got a negative non-metal ion. So this is ionic lattice. So Yagla, that's definitely diamond. I mean, other elements also have similar structures, but the one that we are pretty sure of, that's diamond. Giant macromolecular covalent structure, right? And this one is a molecule. This one is an ethanol molecule. ठीक है, 2 carbons है, alcohol है, ठीक है, so that's definitely eth or ethanol होगा, ठीक है. अब आ जाओ क्वेश्चन में, WNX conduct electricity. Well, that's an alloy. Alloy is like a metal, so it does conduct electricity. And ionic compounds, they also conduct electricity, but उससे क्या है, at room temperature and pressure, right? So I think the question is about room temperature and pressure. So ये तो करेगा electricity conduct because it's a metal. It's a mixture of metals. It's going to have delocalized electrons. It's going to have a sea of mobile electrons, right? पर ये नहीं करेगा. ये ionic compounds, the ions, the charges can't move in solid state at room temperature. You have to melt it, or you have to mix it in water. तो ये electricity conduct नहीं करने वाला room temperature के ऊपर. So I'm gonna cut out option A, although it was partially correct. अच्छा, W and why doesn't diamond does not conduct electricity. ठीक है, its carbon had 4 electrons, all 4 of them got used up, they all bonded. तो पीछे कुछ भी नहीं बचा हुआ, so it's not going to conduct. अच्छा, X and Z dissolve in water. Yes, alcohols they dissolve ionic lattices, especially group 1 compounds सारे के सारे soluble होते हैं. तो लिथियम इज ग्रुप 1 सॉलिबिलिटी टेबल याद रखो, ग्रुप 1 ये इसमें डेटा शीट में भी लिखा हुआ है, ठीक है. लाइक इफ यू लुक एट द डेटा शीट, उसके अंदर पहली लाइन ये लिखी हुई है, ग्रुप 1 और नाइट्रेट्स, ग्रुप 1 NH4+1, ऑल दिस कंपाउंड्स आर सॉलेबल. ये सारे के सारे सॉलेबल हैं, ठीक है. तो इन्होंने तो डिसॉल्व करना ही करना है, ठीक है. तो और अल्कोहल्स, रिमेंबर ऑर्गेनिक केमिस्ट्री में अल्कोहल्स and carboxylic acids, they're both very soluble. ये दो soluble होते हैं. Alkenes, they're not soluble in water. Esters are not soluble, ठीक है. Though I think the other जो organic compounds which you've studied, this is the one that is very soluble. So now the next one is a piece of magnesium is reacts with dilute hydrochloric acid. So what happens? Magnesium is a reactive metal. So it will react with HCl. It will form salt, which is going to be MgCl. Again, Mg group 2 में plus 2 है, Cl group 7 -1, so it's going to be MgCl2 plus H2 gas. ठीक है, metal plus acid always produces H2 gas, and it's going to be a significantly fast reaction, moderately fast reaction, ठीक है. And balance करने के लिए 2 H's, so 2 H's on this side. Now, the resulting solution is then evaporated, leaving a solid residue of magnesium chloride. Yeah, you're getting magnesium chloride, that's true. The covalent solids form, no, that's definitely ionic. Okay? Each chlorine atom gains 1 electron in this process. No, it does not. Why? Because chlorine H is +1, Cl is -1, right? So it doesn't gain electrons in the process. It has already gained electrons. Cl, belly, it was already -1, and Cl is still -1. So it did gain electrons, but it did not gain electrons during the process, because nothing changed during the process. It was -1, it's still -1. So the electron was already gained. पहले gain हो चुका था, so nothing happened during the process. Now, each magnesium atom loses only 1 electron. No, magnesium is group 2, so it loses not 1 electron, but it loses 2 electrons. So molecule of an element are formed during the reaction. That's true. Hydrogen gas, ठीक है. आखिरी जो है, that's definitely true. H2 gas is formed, ठीक है. तो वो तो बना ही बना है, ठीक है. अच्छा, अब ये कि अच्छा, इससे आगे के which dot and cross diagram represents carbon dioxide? Only outer shell electrons are shown. अच्छा, carbon उससे ना start with structural formula. Carbon, remember, forms 4 bonds. Group 4 always forms 4 bonds. Oxygen group 6 में it forms 2 bonds. So what oxygen will do is it's going to form 2 bonds with carbon, but carbon's 4 bonds are still not complete. So there's going to be another oxygen, and carbon would form 2 more bonds with that oxygen. Okay, so in that way, its bonding is complete. So we need to follow, okay, who's following this? Okay, so remember, double bond on both sides. Now that will be option C. Okay, option C is the one that's got a double bond on this side. It's got a double bond on the other side as well. So that is option C. As the next one, 2 statements about the structure and properties of metals are given. Metals are malleable and have high melting points. Metals have mobile electrons in their structure. दोनों ही ठीक हैं. Metals में क्या होता है? You've got metal atoms. So what do metal atoms do? They like to lose electrons. So what will happen? They'll all start turning into positive ions. उनका जो न्यूक्लियस है ना, it doesn't really, वो अपने इलेक्ट्रॉन को इतना strongly attract नहीं करता, so it eventually ends up losing electrons, and the electrons are just roaming around, ठीक है. So gaps में ना, the electrons are busy, mobile, they can conduct electricity. So or malleable and ductile, why? Because when you apply a force, the ions can slip and slide without breaking the metallic bonds, okay? They can just move around. So metals are flexible, they are soft, they can be changed, they can be reshaped. So both statements are definitely correct, and both statements have nothing to do with each other. They're completely different statements. So I think the answer is B. Both are correct, but they 2 does not explain 1, 1 does not explain 2. They've got nothing to do with each other. How many different elements are present in ammonium nitrate? Ammonium क्या होता है? Ammonium is NH4 plus 1. Nitrate क्या होता है? That's NO3 minus 1. तो बस ये इसका फॉर्मूला है. तो how many different elements? I guess there are 3. NHN. नहीं, that's NHNO. Yeah, that's 3. Na, H है और O है. ठीक है, that's it. चलो अगला वाला कि aqueous calcium hydroxide is an alkali. Yep, it is neutralized by dilute nitric acid to produce calcium nitrate and water. So what is your ionic equation? ठीक है. अच्छा, इसका मतलब डायरेक्ट आंसर ये कि डी है. ठीक है. Remember, if an alkali and an acid reaction, ठीक है, an alkali like calcium hydroxide, which is Ca plus 2 and OH is minus 1, so CaOH2 plus nitric acid, that's H plus 1, NO3 minus 1. Now, in any alkali acid reaction, the reaction होता है ना, वो तो यही होता है कि the base produces OH and the acid produces H, and the two combine and they form water. And whatever left, that's your salt. So it's calcium plus 2 and NO3 minus 1 that's left. तो उसका formula क्या होगा? CaNO3 twice. So in any alkali acid reaction, the ionic equation is this. ठीक है, the acid by definition produces. अच्छा, acid by definition produces H plus 1. बस एक सेकंड, अपना ये हैंग हो गया. Plus 2 and NO3 minus. तो वापस H और OH मिल के ना, so acid का काम क्या था? It produces, I mean, that's the definition of an acid. It produces, it's a proton donor. And the base or the alkali produces OH ions. ठीक है, so बस उनका, so that's D is the answer. So you must know this. ठीक है, remember this. अच्छा, ये आ गया उसका empirical formula, right? So it says that a molecule contains carbon. That's 40%. अच्छा, उसी के अंदर it also contains hydrogen. That's 6.7%. By mass, and there's oxygen, which is वो कितना है? 53.3%. अच्छा, अब होगा ये कि the first step, ठीक है, empirical formula. You find the moles, you divide by the MR. So carbon is 12, hydrogen is 1, oxygen 16. So I'm just going to do that. ठीक है, so this one come beach वाला तो पता है, that's going to come out to be 6.7. What about the other ones? That's 40 divided by 12. So that comes out to be 3.33. And what's 53.3 divided by कितना करना है? 53.3 को divide करो 16 से. That also comes out to be 3.33. And then you figure out the whole number ratio. So you divide by the smallest, which, I mean, nazar aa raha hai कि it's going to be 1:2:1, right? So the formula is going to be C1, H would be 2, or O at the end, that's 1. So it's either A or B. और फिर कह रहे हैं कि the MR is now that's the empirical formula. That's the simplest ratio. उसने ऊपर लिखा हुआ है कि the MR of this is 60. So what is this? That's 12 plus 16. कितना होता है? 28. 28 plus 2, that's 30, right? So the empirical formula is coming out to be 30. So if the actual formula has a mass of 60, तो उसका मतलब है the ratio would be the same, but the number of atoms would be double क्योंकि it's the actual mass is double, right? So it's going to be B. कि आपका empirical formula तो ये आया था, ठीक है? That's the simplest ratio, 1:2:1, right? But the mass of the molecule that they said the MR was coming out to be double. So that means you had the same ratio, but the number of atoms was double the atoms shown in the empirical formula. तो इसलिए इसका आंसर क्या है? इसका आंसर इसका आंसर बी है। अच्छा, अब ये कि अच्छा, अब नेक्स्ट वन इज हाउ मेनी tons of aluminum oxide are required to produce 27 tons of aluminium? तो मोल्स का क्वेश्चन है। सो हाउ मेनी टन्स ऑफ एल्यूमिनियम ऑक्साइड, तो कितना एल्यूमिनियम ऑक्साइड चाहिए, Al2O3, ठीक है, दैट्स so he's trying to produce aluminium out of it. So मतलब you don't need the complete equation, so लेकिन you can know the ratio के एक एल्यूमिनियम ऑक्साइड से 2 एल्यूमिनियम्स प्रोड्यूस होंगे, ठीक है, 1 एल्यूमिनियम ऑक्साइड will produce 2 एल्यूमिनियम्स, राइट? तो उसके अंदर फॉर्मूले के अंदर दो है तो दो ही बनेंगे, ठीक है। तो अब वो कह रहा है कि बनाने कितने, 27 टन्स, राइट? सो रिमेंबर, अच्छा, व्हाट आई एम गोइंग टू डू इज ये टन शन मैं खत्म कर देता हूँ, मैं इसको ग्राम्स कर लेता हूँ, ठीक है। उस जो भी वैल्यू आएगी ना, आई जस्ट राइट आई जस्ट राइट मोल्स, ठीक है। अच्छा, ये मैं एक सेकंड जवाब दे दूँ। अच्छा, ये याद रख लो कि जीसी और आईजीसीएसई में मेरे को इतना जमीन आसमान का फर्क नहीं है। 99% सिलेबस सेम है, 99% क्वेश्चंस भी सेम ही है, तो इसलिए इसलिए इट्स काइंड ऑफ द सेम, ठीक है। चलो उतनी देर ये ऐसे ये कर लेते हैं 27। सर रिमेंबर 27 टन्स, वो कन्वर्जन के अंदर मैं नहीं जा रहा, ठीक है। वाई वेस्ट टाइम कन्वर्टिंग स्टफ? व्हाट आई एम गोइंग टू डू इज आई एम जस्ट गोइंग टू think of it as grams, ठीक है, and I'm going to solve it as grams without doing any conversion. So 27, so basically he's asking 27 grams of aluminium. So how many moles is that? So what is moles mass divided by molar mass? So 27, and the AR of aluminium is also 27. So basically वो कह रहा है कि 1 mole, right? तो 1 mole बनाने हैं, तो you can use ratios, right? It's 2:1. तो हनान ये देख लो कि तो 1, ठीक है ना? अच्छा, तो देख लो 2:1 है, सो अकॉर्डिंग टू दिस रेशियो इट्स गोइंग बी 0.5 moles. You just need 0.5 moles of aluminum oxide, and you can calculate the mass of this. Mass कैसे निकालोगे? Moles is what? Moles is mass divided by molar mass. Aluminum oxide is what? 27 into 2 हो गया, oxygen 16 होता है, 16 times 3, so that's 102, ठीक है। तो mass आ जाएगी 102 into 0.5, that's going to give you 51, so B is the answer, 51। लेकिन obviously I just took it as grams, तो अगर ग्राम से सॉल्व कर 51 आ रहा है, सो आई मीन जस्ट थिंक ऑफ इट एज 51, थिंक ऑफ इट एज 51 टन्स, ठीक है। तो आगे भी क्वेश्चंस पड़े रहते हैं। लिथियम ब्रोमाइड के इलेक्ट्रोलिसिस हो रहा है एंड इट्स मोल्टन, सो देयर इज नो वाटर, देयर इज नो H+1, सो एक साइड नेगेटिव है कैथोड एंड यू गॉट द पॉजिटिव साइड, दैट्स योर एनोड। लिथियम किधर होगा? लिथियम जो होगा दैट्स गोइंग टू बी एट द नेगेटिव साइड, पॉजिटिव आयंस गेट अट्रैक्टेड टू द नेगेटिव। ब्रोमाइड, ब्रोमीन ग्रुप 7 है, ठीक है, सो ब्रोमीन -1 विल बी एट एनोड। आई एम जस्ट गोइंग टू राइट द इक्वेशंस, ठीक है, लेट्स रीड द क्वेश्चन लेटर ऑन, ठीक है। इलेक्ट्रॉन्स आए, तो वो इलेक्ट्रॉन्स किसके पास गए? वो इलेक्ट्रॉन्स, लिथियम इज द वन दैट्स गोइंग टू गेन दोस इलेक्ट्रॉन्स। लिथियम +1 वुड गेन एग्जैक्टली 1 इलेक्ट्रॉन, उतने ही चाहिए थे ना, एक +1 है तो उसका मतलब उसको बस एक इलेक्ट्रॉन चाहिए, एंड इट्स गोइंग टू बिकम लिथियम। और Br-1, ठीक है, बैटरी उससे इलेक्ट्रॉन्स बाहर निकाल लेगी, ठीक है। तो Br-1 वुड लूज इलेक्ट्रॉन्स, इट विल बिकम Br, और वो एक इलेक्ट्रॉन उसमें से निकल गया। और लेकिन Br जो है डायटोमिक होता है, डबल करना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि वो दो इलेक्ट्रॉन्स लूज कर दो Br एटम्स बनेंगे, इट्स गोइंग टू फॉर्म Br2, राइट? सो रिमेंबर, बी केयरफुल विद डायटोमिक। सो इस के अब ये जो गैस है ना, नॉर्मली इट्स अ रेड ब्राउन लिक्विड, bromine is a red brown liquid, लेकिन obviously it's molten, so I guess it's at high temperatures, right? He didn't mention temperature, like in molten state, so definitely at a high temperature. So it could be a red brown gas as a positive electrode. So I'm pretty sure that's correct. Um, B, लेकिन बाकी देख लो कि electrons pass through the solution from one electrode to the other. No, they don't. In the solution, you only have ions. You don't have any electrons. Ions pass through the circuit from one electrode to the other. Hmm. हाँ, ions circuit में तो electrons flow कर रहे हैं. Remember this. Circuit के अंदर only electrons are flowing. The lead ions are oxidized. Electron gain करने का मतलब है you're getting reduced, not oxidized. So the last one is also incorrect. So आगे जल्दी से NaI sodium iodide, compound Y is methyl methanoate. One is a solid. X is a solid ionic compound. Ionic compounds have high melting points. You can remember that. Positive and negative ions are strongly attracted to each other. तो ये जो one है ना, that's definitely X. ये जो ester होता है ना, this is methyl methanoate. That's an ester. Esters जो होते हैं, they are oily substances. तो और ये covalent molecule होता है, doesn't conduct electricity. So वो ionic compounds are the ones that conduct electricity. तो ये 2 भी जो है ना, वो X ही है. So I guess दोनों में only X होगा. ठीक है. Remember, ester जो है, that's a covalent molecule. उसने तो it doesn't conduct electricity, right? It's and plus इसका अगर मैं if I even draw the formula, it's going to look like this. HC double bond O और फिर N में. अच्छा, अगला पार्ट है इधर 17 हो गया. अगला पार्ट है 18. फॉर द फोर्थ रिएक्शन ऑफ रिवर्सिबल रिएक्शन, enthalpy change of reaction is -50 and the activation energy is +60. What is the activation energy of the reverse reaction? ठीक है. तो पूरी कहानी बनाई हुई है इसका. मैं I'm going to draw the energy profile diagram. ठीक है. So how is the reaction happening? This axis is vertical axis. That's energy. And I've got a horizontal axis. That's time or progress. ठीक है. Progress कर लेते हैं. चलो जल्दी से. उसे क्या फॉरवर्ड रिएक्शन. इट्स एन एक्सोथर्मिक रिएक्शन. एक्सोथर्मिक रिएक्शन में ना एनर्जी इज लॉस्ट. सो आई मीन यू कैन सी इट्स एन एक्सोथर्मिक रिएक्शन. तो एक्सोथर्मिक में ना एनर्जी इज लॉस्ट. तो रिएक्टेंट्स are going to be at a higher energy and they're going to lose energy. तो प्रोडक्ट्स बन जाएंगे. ठीक है. सो डेल्टा एच इज -50. तो इसका मतलब लॉस्ट -50 ओवरऑल. अच्छा, and then you have your activation energy. Activation energy क्या होती है? It's the energy that is needed at the start of the reaction. ठीक है. Stream and energy is needed every reaction. ये माचिस जलानी है, उसको पहले एनर्जी देनी पड़ती है. आग जलानी है, you have to give it energy. So that's because you have to break the old bonds. ठीक है. पेपर को आग लगाना, you have to give it energy first, ताकि पेपर के पुराने बॉन्ड्स तो टूटे. पुराने नहीं टूटेंगे तो अगले नया रिएक्शन किस तरह स्टार्ट होगा. So you need energy at the start. So that's your activation energy and that's given as +60. वो हमेशा एंडोथर्मिक होती है. It's always +60. I mean, it's always positive. Anyways, so वो कह रहा है कि reverse reaction. So what's the activation energy of the reverse reaction? यानी product से you have to go back to reactants, right? So what's the energy there? So that is going to be this one. If you want to go back, that's the energy that is needed at the start. So it's going to be if 50 or 60 add करो, that's going to be 110. It's going to be D. ठीक है. वापस जाना है तो you have to climb all the way up. You have to gain that energy, and then you're going to release energy. You're going to form new bonds. ठीक है. तो reverse में everything gets reversed and तो बस 110 बनेगा. ठीक है. अच्छा, 19 पे आ जाओ. Diagram shows a titration experiment. Which row about the reaction, acid or alkali reaction? Remember, whenever acid reacts with alkali, it's an exothermic reaction. Acid base, acid alkali reactions are always exothermic. ठीक है. So and when you have exothermic, the sign is going to be negative. ठीक है. It's always exothermic. अच्छा, उसके बाद ये कि sulfur dioxide reacts with oxygen in the air. The reaction is very slow if no catalyst is present. What statement explains this? If अगर catalyst नहीं add किया, so the reaction is definitely going to be slow. So why is the reaction slow? what does a catalyst actually do? Role किया catalyst का catalyst reduces activation energy. It makes the reaction easier to happen. ठीक है, हर reaction में start में you have to break bonds, so it just makes it easier to break bonds. Like if you're trying to burn paper, right? Like if the paper has very strong bonds, it would be very difficult to burn it. ठीक है, but if you break the paper into smaller pieces, it's going to become easier to burn it because you've already broken the old bonds. Now, so it reduces activation energy, and when your activation energy gets reduced, you get more effective collisions. You get the same number of collisions, but they're more successful. Like पहले collisions 100 हो रही थी, but barely 10 collisions were successful. But now there are you still have 100 collisions, but let's say 50% of them are successful. So कौन सा statement ठीक है? The oxygen thing, I mean, obviously that's not a good explanation. Only a small portion of the sulfur dioxide and oxygen molecules have enough energy to react, even at high temperatures. That's true. They don't have enough activation energy. Uh, yep, they don't have enough activation energy. They are colliding, but they're not able to react. They're not able to break the old bonds. Ugly power statement is correct. An enzyme is a biological catalyst that decreases the activation energy of a reaction. That's a perfect explanation. I guess there's nothing wrong with it. बस उसी को skip कर लो फिर आगे. Nitrogen dioxide is a dark brown. Now this is equilibrium. That's reversible reaction. That decomposes as shown in the question. Diagram shows a glass flask containing a mixture of the three gases. The mixture is pale brown. More oxygen is forced into the flask. What color change is seen in the mixture? Now, when you equilibrium के rules क्या हैं कि जब आप एक चीज ज्यादा करोगे ना, when you try to add more oxygen, the equilibrium will try to decrease it. So if you increase the amount of oxygen, the equilibrium will favor the backward reaction, and it will try to decrease the amount of oxygen. So hence more NO2 gas is going to be produced. So it's going to become darker. That's at A. Okay, A will be the answer to this. You try to increase the amount of oxygen, it will try to decrease the amount of oxygen. It will try to convert that oxygen into NO2. Hence, you're going to get more dark brown gas. That's the answer for this. So now अभी भी टाइम है पूरा खत्म करने की कोशिश करते हैं. अच्छा, concentrated hydrochloric acid is oxidized by MnO2. What are the two products of concentrated hydrochloric acid is oxidized by manganese oxide? Yep. So MnO2 oxidizes HCl. Remember oxidizes, ठीक है? MnO2 oxidizes, ठीक है? इसका मतलब क्या है? इसका मतलब ये कि MnO2 oxidizes HCl, right? So that means oxidation का क्या मतलब है? Oxidation का मतलब है loses electrons, right? तो अगर ये now Cl is -1, H is +1, ठीक है? Remember that in this case. So if Cl -1 loses electrons, what would it become? It will become neutral हो जाएगा. It will become Cl again, right? And Cl is as an atom, it's always diatomic, so it's probably going to become Cl2. So definitely Cl2. And if HCl is losing electrons, MnO2 must be gaining electrons. So Mn का charge क्या है यहाँ पे? I think it's +4, right? Because I mean you can calculate the charges. Oxygen is -2, so Mn would be +4. तो Mn electron gain कर रहा होगा. Electron gain करोगे तो charge कम हो जाएगा. So Mn would either become probably +2, कम हो जाएगा, ठीक है? So the answer would be B. I mean, this one is a complicated question, especially for O levels, by O level standards. So remember, he said HCl is getting oxidized. So that means oxidation must be losing electrons. So हमें पता है कि Cl-1, if it loses electrons, I'm not talking about H over here because he didn't give H as an option. So H is out of the question. But anyway, Cl-1 loses electrons, it's going to become Cl2, right? So that's it's going to lose electrons, it's going to become 0, right? और वो अगर ये लूज कर रहा है, so the other one must be gaining electrons. So Mn plus 4, if it gains electrons, तो उसका charge कम हो जाएगा. It's going to become plus 2 because plus 2 and plus 6 are the only two options. So I'm going to go with plus 2. So B is the right answer. ठीक है. चलो जल्दी जल्दी खत्म करें इसको. The table gives some information about for redox reaction, which correctly gives correct information about what is oxidized and the evidence that this is oxidation. Hmm. तो एविडेंस ठीक है. सो विच इज ऑक्साइड? कॉपर इज, ये बैठ के कैलकुलेट करो ना. कॉपर इज प्लस 2, कॉपर इज 0 में है. तो दैट इज रिड्यूस्ड. चार्ज कम हो रहा है, चार्ज कम हो रहा है, सो दैट इज रिड्यूस्ड. सो ए गलत, ए इज रॉन्ग. फॉरगेट ए. Sodium, what's happening to sodium? Sodium is 0. Over here, sodium is +1. So that definitely loses electrons, right? So B is fine. That is exactly what I said. Sodium lost an electron. ठीक है. Whenever you lose electrons, your charge increases. ठीक है. So that's fine. अच्छा, अगला 25. Which statement about acids and bases are correct? A strong acid reacts with carbonates, but all weak acids do not. इस पे आते हैं बाद में. The oxides of group 1 metals are amphoteric. No, they're not. They're very strongly basic. Group 1 metals को तो कहते ही, they use the word alkali metals, right? So that's, B is definitely incorrect. The pH of 1 mole per dm cube ethanoic acid is higher than the pH of 1 mole per dm cube sulfuric. That's 100% correct. Organic acids are weak acids. तो अगर वीक एसिड का पीएच होगा ना, वीक एसिड का पीएच 7 के करीब होगा. वीक एसिड का जो पीएच होगा ना, दैट्स गोइंग टू बी अराउंड, लेट्स से 5. I'll just give it 5. ठीक है. And sulfuric acid is a pretty strong acid. It fully ionizes. So that's a strong acid. Strong acid will have a pH of, let's say, 1. Let's say 1. It will be further away. It's going to be close to 0, strong acids. So this statement is perfectly correct. It's higher than the pH of. Yep, it is higher. So that's fine. I don't think any way this could be wrong in any way. तो वन पे ए जो है वो गलत है. मतलब रिमेंबर एसिड्स के ना 3 रिएक्शंस होते हैं, 3-4. वन इज विद मेटल्स, ये यहाँ पे लिखे हुए भी है. ठीक है. Acids, they react with bases, they react with carbonates, they react with metals, they react with ammonia as well. ठीक है. So remember reactions of acids. तो वो सारों के साथ रिएक्ट करते हैं. They don't pick and choose. अच्छा, अगला पार्ट किधर गया? Some type of chemical reactions are listed. थोड़े से रह गए नाम, बस ये खत्म करें. Some types of chemical reactions are listed: acid-base combustion, redox. Which types of reaction occur in a blast furnace during the extraction of iron? ये blast furnace वाला मैं खोल के भी बता देता हूँ. किधर गया blast furnace? Metals, ये वाला उठा लेते हैं. 1 second, मेरे पास इसका, हाँ चलो, किधर चला गया? अच्छा, blast furnace, let's just show you. ये blast furnace है. ठीक है. Extraction of iron. Remember the processes. Remember extraction of iron. तो I'll just go through extraction of iron very quickly, and just to recap. उसके अंदर ना 3 चीजें डालते हैं. You add coke, you add hematite, and you add limestone, right? And what happens is कि पहले तो वो coke, which is coal, ठीक है, that's basically a type of coal. उसको burn करते हैं, उसको आग लगाते हैं. Coke starts to burn, it starts to produce a lot of heat. So that's why you see the blast furnace catching fire red hot. ठीक है, so it burns a lot. And that produces a lot of heat. Some of the coke also reacts with carbon dioxide, turns into carbon monoxide. The hematite, which is Fe2O3 with a lot of impurities like sand. What happens to hematite? It gets reduced. Carbon aata hai, it steals the oxygen and it turns into carbon dioxide. Iron gets produced. And then what you have is, okay, you've got, then what you have is the limestone goes, decomposes, turns into a basic calcium oxide, which then starts reacting with the acidic silicon oxide. And when it starts reacting with silicon oxide, So when it starts reacting with silicon oxide, it turns into silicate, which is slag. तो वो top surface के ऊपर the slag floats around, ठीक है, on the top surface. So question किधर गया? So what type of chemical reactions are listed? All three, I guess, because if I go back, combustion is happening, redox is happening, reduction of iron oxide is happening, plus you got an acid-base reaction that's going on as well. तो तीनों हो रहे हैं. बात खत्म. 1, 2, 3. ठीक है, that's the answer. A. Acha, which method could be used to make a pure sample of potassium? Potassium chloride, KCl. सारे reactions निकालो क्या क्या होगा एसिड कौन सा यूज करोगे you're going to use HCl ठीक है Cl आ रहा है so it's definitely going to be HCl and what base would you use you're going to use KOH and it will form water right or if you want to form KCl you're going to use the acid HCl and you're going to use a metal carbonate which is going to be potassium carbonate right so K plus 1 CO3 minus 2 so it's going to be K2CO3 और इसमें क्या होगा it's going to form water and carbon dioxide. To form KCl, you also have metal, which is going to be K plus HCl reaction as well. And it will form H2 gas. Okay? But this reaction cannot be done because group 1 metal, it will explode. Okay? So your lab will catch fire. So don't do that reaction. Anyways, you're left with the first two reactions. And the first two reaction, everything is soluble. I mean, this is soluble. Acid is soluble. Group 1 compounds are all soluble. So if all group 1 compounds are soluble and they form solutions, now the only option that's left is carbon dioxide gas is titration. So D is the answer. Okay, that's the only option that you're left with. ये इसके अंदर भी डेटा शीट जो acid basis salts वाली ना इसको भी देख लो इसमें लिखे हुए सारे. Titration comes when you have soluble reactants and soluble and the salt that's being produced is also soluble. ठीक है तो titration इस्तेमाल करो. और ये वो रिएक्शन है सॉल्ट प्रोड्यूस करने के लिए एसिड प्लस बेस एसिड प्लस मेटल कार्बोनेट एसिड प्लस मेटल तो चलो आगे भी बस 13 रह गए जल्दी से करते हैं a pure sample of lead sulfate is made by reacting aqueous solutions of two salts the lead sulfate so the lead sulfate is an insoluble salt ठीक है remember sulfates all are soluble except for a bunch of sulfates calcium barium lead etc ठीक है so lead sulfate is insoluble precipitation is the method yeah that's used so since it's तो उसके अंदर क्या करते हैं you think of two salts or two compounds one containing lead ions the other containing sulfate ions except that they should be soluble तो lead nitrate कर लेते हो because nitrates are all mostly soluble ठीक है अच्छा sulfates में you can go with group 1 any group 1 sulfate so I guess potassium sulfate would work ठीक है K plus 1 group 1 compounds are all soluble as well so one compound contributes sulfate ions to the solution the other compound contributes lead ions to the solution the solution में sulfate ions and lead ions they combine they form the insoluble lead sulfate which can be filtered out और पीछे solution में क्या रह जाएगा solution में you're left with KNO3 but that's soluble right so that just remains part of the solution it does not form a precipitate does not form a solid so D Agla, which statement is correct? Food can be preserved using sulfur dioxide. That's off the top. That's correct. Sulfur dioxide is a food preservative. That's it. Next one. Element Y is in pH 3 of the pure table. It forms a chloride that is a liquid at room temperature. So definitely not ionic, right? क्योंकि low melting point है ना it's a liquid right so chloride so pH 3 में कौन आता है कितना pH 3 हमारा periodic table right so if you look at pH 3 it could be silicon chloride phosphorus chloride right sulfur chloride भी होता है so some non-metal chloride right उन्हीं में से कोई होगा तो group number and the nature of the oxide so definitely acidic and the group number is going to be डी। अब मुझे ये नहीं पता सल्फर क्लोराइड, अब आई एम नॉट श्योर बट इट्स गोइंग टू बी लो मेल्टिंग पॉइंट है ना, इट्स अ लिक्विड राइट। तो नॉन मेटल्स इट्स गोइंग टू बी इक्विवेलेंट मॉलिक्यूल, इट्स गोइंग टू बी सल्फर क्लोराइड। और फिर सल्फर का जो ऑक्साइड होता है ना, दैट इज डेफिनेटली एसिड बिकॉज यू मेक सल्फ्यूरिक एसिड आउट ऑफ इट। लेकिन ये चेक कर लेते हैं, कंफर्म कर लेते हैं, सल्फर क्लोराइड ये होता क्या है? लिक्विड ही होना चाहिए वैसे। नहीं, लिक्विड यही है, येलो सल्फर क्लोराइड, आई गेस दैट्स अ लिक्विड। यप यू गॉट दैट राइट। ठीक है, दैट्स अ लिक्विड। चलो आगे 30 दो नाम बस 10 रह गए। ये बस चल दिया। विच गैसेस आर यूज्ड इन लाइट बल्ब्स? ऑक्सीजन तो इस्तेमाल नहीं करते, आर्गन और नियोन तो करते हैं, 1 and 3 राइट। ऑक्सीजन तो करनी भी नहीं चाहिए बिकॉज ऑक्सीजन इज वेरी रिएक्टिव राइट, इट्स सुपर रिएक्टिव, सो light bulb will completely react at high temperatures especially. 31 भी हो गया। अगला 32, carbonates of WX-3 are heated and the results are shown. तो white green, green तो याद रखना, green green कलर किस कार्बोनेट का होता है, ठीक है। यू गॉट द डेटा शीट। अच्छा, जिसमें मैंने कार्बोनेट का तो लिखा ही नहीं है। कॉपर कार्बोनेट, रिमेंबर दैट्स ग्रीन। ठीक है, कॉपर कार्बोनेट इज ग्रीन। अच्छा, फिर एक वाइट है, दो वाइट है। वाइट जो होगा दैट्स probably going to be group 1 2 right, because transition metal carbonates are colored। तो वो कह रहा है कि अच्छा, इसमें देयर इज नो गैस गिवन ऑफ। कार्बोनेट्स में इशू ये कि रिएक्टिव कार्बोनेट्स दे डोंट लाइक टू डिकम्पोज। अनरिएक्टिव कार्बोनेट्स दे डिकम्पोज क्वाइट इजीली। अच्छा, ये ब्लैक सॉलिड है तो ये कॉपर ऑक्साइड बन रहा है, ठीक है। गैस कौन सी प्रोड्यूस हुई है? दैट्स कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड व्हिच टर्न्स लाइम वाटर मिल्की राइट। तो एक्स इज कुड बी कॉपर, दैट्स फाइन, थ्री थ्री ठीक है। अच्छा, और why जो है ना, that's going to be the most reactive because the most reactive carbonates, metals, they don't decompose that easily। तो ये जो है ना, that's why is probably going to be the most reactive, so ये गलत हो गया। why is probably the most reactive। 2 निकल गया, पीछे 3 रह गए। 3 फिर सी है, फिर 1 भी सही है। हाँ, मतलब कार्बोनेट है, हाँ 1 ऑब्वियसली ठीक है, इट गिव्स ऑफ कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड, सो दैट्स फाइन। ठीक है ना, वो भी सही है। अच्छा, अगला ये कि द डायग्राम शोज। अच्छा। अच्छा, अगला पार्ट है, अगला पार्ट के डायग्राम शोज एन एक्सपेरिमेंट टू डिटरमिन परसेंटेज ऑफ ऑक्सीजन इन द एयर। ठीक है, तो वो बस उसको आग लगाएगा, ऑक्सीजन खत्म हो जाएगी, तो सम ऑफ द गैस गेट्स यूज्ड अप, तो व्हाट वो सक्शन गेट्स क्रिएटेड एंड वाटर राइजेस अप। तो सो आई थिंक इट्स गोइंग टू बी, ऑक्सीजन कितनी होती है? 21% राइट। एयर हैज 21% ऑक्सीजन राइट, सो whatever 21% is, that gas would be missing, so I think that would be C। ठीक है, जब वो when the oxygen gets used up, it's probably going to be C। 34 पे आ जाओ। टू स्टेटमेंट्स आर गिवन। द परसेंटेज ऑफ कार्बन में मास इज ग्रेटर इन मीथेन देन इन ब्यूटेन। अब ये जो स्टेटमेंट है ना, इसको बैठ के ना सोचो, बैठ के। मीथेन CH4, ब्यूटेन, ब्यूटेन क्या होता है? एल्केन CnH2n+2, 4 कार्बन होते हैं, C4H10 राइट। ब्यूटेन राइट। तो परसेंटेज ऑफ कार्बन निकालो, इट्स 12 डिवाइड बाय डी, टोटल क्या होगा? 16 टाइम्स 100 राइट। अच्छा, कार्बन 4 कार्बन, दैट्स 12 टाइम्स 4, दैट्स क्या होता है 12 टाइम्स 4? 12 टाइम्स 4 48, 48 होता है, एंड डिवाइड बाय द टोटल, सो 10 हाइड्रोजन, दैट्स 58। नाउ यू कैन डू योर, आई मीन आई वुड हैव टू डू माय मैथ। एक सेकंड, ये मेंटली नहीं कर सकता है। करो बैठ के कैलकुलेट। व्हाट इज 48 डिवाइडेड बाय 58? 82%, 83%। व्हाट इज 12 डिवाइड बाय 16? दैट्स 75। इसमें ज्यादा है। ब्यूटेन परसेंट ऑफ कार्बन ग्रेटर देन, गलत हो गया, स्टेटमेंट 1 इज रॉन्ग, रॉन्ग, ठीक है, दैट्स रॉन्ग। ब्यूटेन इज वन ऑफ टू आइसोमर्स विद द मॉलिक्यूलर फॉर्मूला C4H10। हाँ वो ठीक है, क्योंकि हाँ दो ही आइसोमर्स होंगे। either the 4 carbon atoms are, and these are all your hydrogens, ठीक है, 3 hydrogens, two, 3 hydrogens over here. Or you've got, or it could be there's another arrangement which is 4 carbons. You could have a carbon in the middle, branched. So 3 hydrogens, this carbon would also have 3 hydrogens with this one, and there's one H over here. So statement 2 is correct only. See, ठीक है. आगे आ जाओ. 1 mole of each of the compounds shown is completely combusted. How many compounds need exactly 9 moles of oxygen for... अब ये कौन बैठ के हिसाब लगाए? 35 बैठ के ना आप सारों की इक्वेशन लगाओ. ये वरी करो बैठ के, ठीक है. लग जाएंगे 5 मिनट. C5H12O. मैं एक का कर रहा हूँ, ठीक है. I'm not going to solve this question, ठीक है. It's a waste of time. So I've got carbon dioxide and I've got water over here. तो कितने अनानी बैठ के खुद ही सॉल्व कर लेना. लेकिन अब every organic compound hydrocarbon, it produces the same carbon dioxide and water. So there's 5 carbon dioxide. I'm going to balance it. C5, sorry, H12 है ये. So there's going to be 6 H2Os. Oxygen बैठ के गिनो अब. So I've got 5 to 10, 10 plus 16, 16 oxygen. So I've got 1 already. So 16 में से 1, that's 15. So this is going to be 15 divided by 2, right? So that's not 9. ये तो निकल गया. तो देख लो बैठ के ना, बाकियों की इक्वेशन इसी तरह बनाओ. ट्राई एंड बैलेंस इट, ठीक है. मेक श्योर मैं एक ट्राई कर लेता हूँ ऐसे. C6H12, CO2, H2O, 6 CO2, 12 hydrogen, so 6 H2Os. So that's how many? 6 twos are 6 twos are क्या होता है? 12 plus 6, 18. So I guess there's 9. ये आ गया, एक तो हो गया. This needs 9 oxygen, right? This one definitely would not need 9 oxygens. Or I think 1 ही होगा ये. आखिरी check कर लो. I'm pretty sure the last one also would not need 9 oxygens, ठीक है? So you can just have a go at the last one. See whether it needs 1 oxygen. It needs 9 oxygen, sorry. अच्छा, अगला पार्ट ये कि the reactants and products of 2 reactions are shown. This is hydration, definitely. I'm going to write this. This is an alkene, CnH2, and that's an alkene, right? So double bond hoga, and there's H's. I'm not drawing the H's. 1H, TK, every carbon atom. So water is being added. So water will get added. So what will be produced? 3 H's. Next one, 1H, single bond. So water will get added. So H and OH, right? So that's hydration. And the next one is definitely combustion. So definitely combustion. So he says identity of compound X. That's a propanol. That's 3 carbon atoms. So that's propanol. So it's going to be either C or D. Conditions for reaction 1. इसके लिए काफी चीजें चाहिए होती हैं. You need 60 atmosphere pressure. You need 300 degrees centigrade temperature, and you need a catalyst, which is phosphoric acid. So heat and catalyst, you need both of them. So again, still no help, C and D. And the next one, the last one is definitely combustion, carbon dioxide and water. So that is combustion. So the answer is D. अच्छा, अगला बस लास्ट अनानी आखिरी बस खत्म हो रहा है. Which statement about carboxylic acid? That's a carboxylic acid functional group. And that is true. यही होता है carboxylic acid. Every carboxylic acid has exactly serial bond O and OH. That's fine. ठीक है. So मसला क्या था? First ही था. So you have to name this. This is an ester. An ester has a double bond O and a single bond O बीच में. Exact middle में, somewhere in the carbon chain, it's got this. How do you name an ester? You name the ester in 2 parts. Okay? So 3 carbon atoms on this side, so that's prop. And you got 4 carbon atoms on the other side, so that's bute. Just single O side, that's called vial. That's propyl, and the double bond O side is O8. So this one is propyl butanoate. So C is your C is का आंसर. हाँ ठीक है, वो मैंने देख लिया, C आंसर है. So next one, polyethene is formed by polymerization of ethene, right? So what happens in polymerization of ethene? Ethene is two carbon atoms, double bond. H पे ड्रॉ ही कर ले तो ये सारे H है. तो क्या होता है कि वो इस तरह के ना ढेर सारे सारे आपस में they all add up. That is known as addition polymerization. Thousands of they would just add up, ठीक है. और वो बीच में ना double bond just turns into a single bond. So that's one is definitely addition. अच्छा, टेरलिन और नायलॉन जो है ना, that's condensation polymer. So that's definitely condensation. Or nylon and proteins, etc., they've got amide linkages. So one more is rejected. Terylene has ester linkages. फिर last वाली answer कर रहा है. Proteins, they form amino acids. Proteins are made from amino acids. So A is the answer. A is the correct answer for this one. चलो आखिरी, that's a polymer. ठीक है, that's the repeat unit. So what do you do? How do you find the monomer? वो linkages जो ना खत्म करो, put the double bond back in, right? So that's it. So the answer for this one is A. पहले carbon पे there's a CH3H. पहले carbon there's a CH3 and H. Remember, the direction of the bonds is not important. ठीक है? The first carbon atom has a methyl and an H attached, and the second carbon atom has a Cl and a Br attached. ठीक है? So A is the answer. चलो ठीक है, बाकी वो देख लेना, मेटल्स के भी वीडियो लेक्चर्स वो megalecture.com के ऊपर, ठीक है. दे अपलोडेड देयर, तो उस पर नोट्स भी मैंने डाल दिए, ठीक है. तो मेक श्योर गो एंड हैव अ लुक, ठीक है. उन सारों को डिटेल में स्टडी कर लेना, ठीक है. चले, ओके, ठीक है.